Let's talk a bunch of different topics.
How'd her career get there?
This is a podcast with Lauren Asghari.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening. Hit that like button, leave a positive comment, or hit subscribe to get alerted when new episodes drop. All of this will help keep the project going. Thank you for your support and enjoy the episode. This is the Lauren Asghari podcast, How'd Her Career Get There? And my guest today is Yvette Diamond, who has a multitude of experience. I'm very excited to get into this conversation. She is currently the chief advisor of our Facet and director of ops at Project JumpStart, and also an aspiring author, which we will certainly get to. She's been named by the Daily Record as a Maryland Top 100 woman 3 times, which puts her in the circle of excellence, which I know from knowing other women in that group that she is in elite company. So Yvette, welcome. I'm very excited for our conversation.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So let's start. Maybe give an overview of kind of your world currently. Not maybe like through the consulting lens, or if somebody were to meet you at a party and said, "What do you do?" How would you summarize that?
So I'm in a great place in life. I am working kind of a culmination of all the different career pathways I've taken, have come to this point. And what I'm doing now as the director of operations for Project JumpStart is working in workforce development. I'm a workforce development strategist for the last several years. And Project JumpStart is a job readiness program in Baltimore City for underserved community members, and helping them find pathways into construction because construction industry has so many pathways and opportunities for individuals to get started and to continue into life-sustaining wages. It's also beneficial for employers. So employers are often saying they can't find good help. And I would argue that it's because they're not looking in the right places. There are a multitude of people who want to work and learn and just need the opportunity to get started. So the work we're doing at Project JumpStart is important work. We've been around for 20 years as a program and a few years as our own entity. And we're really creating pathways for employers to find good people to work and for employees to get started.
And if we were to jump in our time machine and go back to when Yvette was a little kid, give a little bit of context for our audience, and then we'll obviously talk about your career progression. But a little bit of context. Where'd you grow up? What were you like as a kid? Siblings, only child?
Okay. So I pretty much grew up in Maryland, and I was born in Florida in Cocoa Beach. My father worked on the Apollo space program. He was in quality control for the launch. So it was an exciting time to, be in space. My parents are immigrants. They immigrated 2 times in their lifetime. First from Indonesia to Holland after World War II, and then from Holland to America in the late 50s on the Truman Treaty. So President Truman invited individuals like my parents to come to the United States with sponsorship and then become U.S. citizens. And so the work that my dad did to educate himself and then to be on a program to put someone on the moon is a good example of what immigrants from any country could do and have done for our country. So I grew up with that background, and for those who come from immigrant families, there is a pathway and a certain belief in what is possible and what we can do. And my parents had a lot of struggles. It is not an easy life to uproot and start over, but desperate things caused desperate measures. And so people come to this country to find those opportunities, but not without trauma and drama. So I grew up with my share of that, as I know others can relate to. And the one good thing was they said you could do anything. And I've really kind of held on to that in my darkest moments to know that I can do anything and can find a pathway to wherever I choose to go. My life, I have an older brother. And so we grew up in a very middle class life in Howard County, Maryland.
And if you remember, when you were a kid, did you aspire to be, or what, let me rephrase, did you aspire? Let me rephrase that question. What did you aspire to be as you grew up, or did you have something in mind?
So I was interested in fashion, as a lot of young girls, especially at that time, were. I'm sure they still are. And so I did some modeling as a young child and thought I would find a pathway in fashion, not necessarily as a model, because I guess I understood that wasn't the right physique for that. But I wanted to go into fashion merchandising and design. But I quickly realized that I'm not an artist, and merchandising just wasn't a long-term plan for me. One thing in high school, I took a computer class, and it was like a computer programming class, which obviously back then was early for those types of classes to be. And so it was a privilege to have that. But my teacher wrote in my yearbook that year that I should consider a career in computers. And so later, reading that is funny because a big portion of my career has had something to do with computers and data specifically.
What do you remember from and it can be from your parents or maybe other influences in your life, but as a child, outside of, if you can be anything that you want, or, opportunities can be limitless if you're willing to work for them. What are maybe one or two traits that you have today that you noticeably either saw in your parents or saw in other influences your life as a child that you've carried through your life that have served you well?
I think resilience. And what I've come to learn is that not everybody is resilient. That, when I get through something and people around me say, "Oh, you're so resilient," I used to think, well, what was my choice? But I recognize now that we do have a choice in how we approach the dark sides of life, right? And I think my parents taught me that I have the skills and the strength and the all the tools I need so that I can be resilient. But if I were someone who didn't gain that perspective in my childhood, I don't think I could be where I am today, in a place that is content, both personally, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
I love that response. That might have been one of my favorites yet. That well, I think that resiliency piece just really, I think that hits home for a lot of people, in the sense of, if they are resilient, they get it, and if they're not, it maybe gives them a different lens to look at things through. So,
Well, I think it really gave me some perspective about people around me, right? It's easy to say, oh, well, everyone should be, resilient, but not everyone can be. And I think we need to have some empathy around that and understand that we all have had our own journeys and we all have our strengths in different places. And resiliency is one of those things that is a strength. It's a muscle that you have to work at. And so rather than being judgmental of that, perhaps we help people find that ounce of resilience that can get them to the next place.
I love that, and I want to pull the thread on that a little bit more, because I think it's really valuable. Nature, nurture on resiliency, your perspective on it, and then how do people build resiliency? And to the point that you touched on earlier, right? Everybody's experiences, everybody's environment, all those things are different. And it's certainly unfair to to judge what is resiliency compared one person to another. But if people maybe don't see that in themselves, or nobody in their life has ever told them or given them the opportunity to build it, how does one build resiliency? And do you think that's nature or nurture?
It's an interesting question. So I guess I can speak for myself. I come from a long line of survivors. The history for my family is pretty deep, and it's fascinating, through wars, through immigration, through the kind of the worst of humankind. And so, I'm come to understand generational trauma and what that does. And I can tell you that it's not all bad, right? So part of what makes who we are the circumstances from which we come. And so we get to focus on the bad or focus on the good, right? No, nothing is all bad and nothing is all good. There's a price to pay for everything. But I think one muscle that you can work on is looking for what we in my household call the glimmers. So, when you're having a bad time in life, to really take a moment to see the glimmers, see what is good. It could just be that it's sunny today. It could just be that a butterfly landed, in front of you. Anything you can think of, count them, because those are glimmers. Those are the good things in life. And if you're focusing on those good things, then those harder, heavier, not so great things get a little more distance, a little more perspective, a little out of the lens, and you don't give them all the energy and air that they want. And so I think it's a mixture. I think that we are born with some sense of resiliency coming from our heritage. And I think that we also get to choose how we want to behave in life. And some of us, that becomes a little easier because we've been working on it for so long. And for some, it's going to be harder, but it's like a muscle. So, if we don't exercise, the muscle can't become stronger.
Mm-hmm. There is something to be said for, I'm drawing a through line to like getting outside of your comfort zone. It is true. It's like each time that you do something, there is something to be said that if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? If nothing else, the confidence of, okay, I've been here before, I know what to expect, and I can navigate it, right? To your point about building the muscle.
Right. And this 56-year-old self has the benefit of looking back and saying, well, you did that. So if you could do that, you could do anything, right? And so I think age and wisdom do come together.
Mm-hmm. What let's fast forward a little bit to from childhood to kind of the earlier stages in your career, and if you can kind of combine it, but give kind of an overview of where you started your career, just in terms of work or industry or types of things that you were doing, and then kind of how you progressed to just what you're in now, and then I want to leapfrog to the author part, right? Because I think that's fascinating. So just kind of give an overview of kind of your career progression.
Yeah. So it was not a straight line. And I would tell people probably the best careers are not a straight line. I am a benefactor of all the lessons learned in all the different career stops. Some of those career stops were intentional and some of those career stops were forced upon me. So I started really in computers, and at the time in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, if you can imagine, computers were sold in components. So you'd have a hard drive, a floppy drive, and a motherboard. Then you put all the pieces in the actual, CPU, and then you'd have the monitor separate, right? All this stuff. And then they were sold in pieces and parts from distributors. So wholesaler, distributor, and then to the public. And I worked for several organizations who were distributors, and we would pull all those components together, build systems, and sell them to the retailers who then sold them to the public. And that industry was a tough industry at the time. Commodity products, it was cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and harder to stay in business. And so my early career, it was like a revolving door. Every 6 months, a company would go out of business, and you'd have to try to find another one who hopefully wouldn't go out of business, but inevitably they did. And so for several years, my resume was like another one. But I'll tell you, I learned a lot about business in that process, and also about these experiences that occurred when a business goes out of business, and how it feels when the banks come in and lock the doors and you can't even get your jacket that you left on your chair the night before. Like, it was insane. And at a young age, it was just eye-opening about life and business. So I decided I wanted to pivot, and I found a job posting for a company called Phillips Publishing. And at the time, they were the largest newsletter publisher in the world. And they were in Rockville, Maryland, or North Potomac. And I wrote this incredible cover letter that attracted the interest of the manager who was hiring. And she became an early mentor of mine. And it got me the interview. And once I got the interview, then I could sell myself. And that's a really big lesson, is just trying to find a way to get the interview. Because if you can get the interview, likely you can get the job. And so I started there as a trainer on a new database system that they were launching. And from there, over the next 9 years, I had 7 promotions. And when I left, I was the vice president of operations for this publishing company. So 9/11 happened, and I had a team of about 100 people at the time, and I wouldn't leave until I made sure everyone got where they needed to go. And for those of us who can remember 9/11, we know that there were things happening not too far from home in Virginia, around the Pentagon, and we had a lot of people who lived in that area. And we didn't know what was coming next, right? That was so close that we weren't sure. And so I kind of stayed in the office, waiting for all the calls from everyone to let us know that they had gotten where they were supposed to go. And then I went home. So I was driving home around 4:30. And I had a young child at the time. And I remember my husband then said, he was really glad that I wasn't in one of those buildings, because I would never have gotten out, because I had chosen to stay. And while that sounds honorable, I'm going to get emotional. While that sounded honorable, I had a priority for my child. And so I quickly decided I needed to leave. I needed to change my life and not work the crazy hours I was working, and just set a new path for myself and my family. So I chose to create a business plan and open up a spa and salon in Frederick, Maryland. And so for the next 6 years, eventually I had 2 spas in Frederick, and they were award-winning and very magical place to be. And it was an exciting time and a very pivotal time in my life. So I learned a lot. I'm not a service provider. I just hired really quality service providers and surrounded myself with really strong employees who had the same passion for the mission to provide our guests with an experience that allowed them to escape the chaoses of their own lives and to feel the healing of touch and comfort and beauty. And so it was a really magical time in my life. But then I had a lot of what I call my life tsunami. I had lost my grandmother, my mother, my marriage, and my business all within a year or so. And eventually I became pretty homeless. And had to find my way to another path. And so now a single mom, I had different responsibilities and a different focus to just, how do I get us out of this hole and stop, just looking for change to fill the gas tank, and see how do I use all this. I was a vice president. I should be able to do this thing, right? But it was in the '08 crash and recession time, and getting a job wasn't so easy. And I had shifted, everyone kind of wants, if you're an accountant, they want an accountant, right? So they don't want someone who's had all this other experience. And so you figure it out. So I became a consultant. I thought, well, let's see if I can, help others avoid some of the things that I had fallen into with my own business, and became a business coach, a career coach, and did a lot of marketing and operational support. And then I ended up finding a path to an organization that decided they didn't just want me as a consultant, they wanted to actually have me be their chief operations officer. And so I enjoyed 7 or 8 years as the chief operations officer of a logistics company. So very different than the spa salon world, very different than publishing, and very different from being homeless. So I really loved that job and the team I worked with there. And we grew to an organization that when I started was at about $1.5 million, I think. And then when I left, we were at $24 million. And so I was excited to be a part of the growth and development of that growth. It was an exciting time. And in that time, I also fortunately met my husband that I have now. My daughter and I have had a great life together, and I'm in an amazing place now. So in 2018, I decided, I had this epiphany a few years prior about how privileged I was to, even in my darkest time, know that I didn't belong in that space. And I had read a book that happened to be written by our current governor, Wes Moore, and his book is titled The Other Wes Moore. And in that book, he talks about his life paralleling with another life of a person named Wes Moore who grew up in similar circumstances, but who is currently in jail. And the difference in their lives is exactly this privilege, is this idea that Governor Wes Moore knew that his life was supposed to take a different trajectory. And he had support mechanisms, family, mentors, pathways opened for him that allowed him to be who he is today. And that the other Wes Moore, it wasn't for lack of trying. When you read the book, you understand that he put himself in opportunities to better his life. And unfortunately, I would argue that we failed him as a society and didn't get him what he needed when he needed it to be able to stay on that track. And as I mentioned, desperate people, have to do desperate things. And so he ends up doing something so desperate that it lands him in jail. And it really, really brought it home to me that I was never going to go down that path, even though I had a similar, moment of being homeless. I was never without hope. I was never without options. I was never without the tools to stay on the right side. And so I thought I need to do something to help solve the great mystery of how can we have an and underemployment problem at the same time that we have a labor shortage. It's not possible if we would use the tools we have to solve the two problems simultaneously. And so in 2018, I left my big corporate job and decided to embark in workforce development and come up with strategies and see what we could do to move this needle. I've learned a lot. I was a little naive when I first got into this, but I think that we're doing the things that we can do in the environments that are available to us. And I can tell you it is an uphill battle to help employers to understand where there are people and what are the things that have to be done to make those people ready and prepared for life.
You thank you for sharing all of that. You touched on a couple of things there that I'm jotting down 4 or 5 things that you said to revisit and maybe unpack a little bit more. Because I think so many things that you touched on there are relevant to messages that I get after doing these podcast episodes, and something just resonates with people, and it's just inspiring to hear other people like yourself having a shared experience. When we first going back to 9/11, what was the part where you got emotional there? What was the underlying part of that? Where was that emotion coming from as you were telling that story about your daughter, and you could have, been in
Yeah, I think, moms have a lot to balance. Where do you get to keep yourself, like what your ambitions are, your goals, your achievements, your plans for yourself, and your identity, right? I recognize that my identity is multifaceted. It's why I called my company Our Facets, because we have so many facets, especially women. I think it is a different way that we are. And again, whether that's nurture or nature, I'm not sure, but we have a certain role in life, expectations in life for ourselves and from others that make it really difficult to make these big choices. And so, it made me sad to think that I could have been someone in 9/11 or at any other time who would have sacrificed her daughter's well-being because I was responsible or felt responsible for hundreds of people that worked for me, right? That's had I decided the other way, that wouldn't have felt good either, right? And it's so these the harder decisions to be in. I think for women, finding a way to have both, to find that compartmentalization is important. I'm sad to see that women are maybe giving up some of these opportunities to stay in the career world. Um, I think we made a mistake in feminism years ago when we said, we can bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan. We don't need to do all of it, right? We need to find ways to get it all done. And that's a very different approach. But I believe we can have it all. We just have to be intentional about it. And I'm really proud of my daughter, and I'm proud that I was able to emulate a strong professional woman so that she can be a strong professional woman and a mom, right? Those do not have to be independent of one another.
It's interesting as you say that, as you were telling the story and as you were getting emotional, I was like, Lauren, hold it together. But it was like, and I'm a business owner and I have 2 daughters, and it is, I just, I felt what I would imagine you were feeling in that moment of just this pool of choices and priorities. How do you, as a wife, as a mother, as all the different relationships that you have in your life, and obviously we'll get to the aspiring author piece and your work now. How do you integrate all of those things, and how do you I'm not saying dads don't have it too, by the way. I'm just saying this because I'm a mom, right? And having spoken with other moms, like mom guilt is a thing, right?
Mhm.
How do you integrate that? Not integrate mom guilt, but how do you integrate all the different facets of your life? And what advice would you have for someone who's really maybe struggling with that?
Mhm. So I think you have to be intentional. My husband and I have a saying in our household: are we living or merely just existing? And we're highly focused on living. Although sometimes we have some weekends where we've been going, and we say, can we just exist this weekend? Because sometimes having fun can be stressful too, right? It's just too many plans, too many things. But we're very intentional about seizing our moments where we can, being with friends and family. I think compartmentalizing is a really important skill to figure out. I have some amazing friends that I have accumulated over my lifetime. And about, I guess, 6 years ago, I was having a hard year. My father had passed away after a long health battle, and I was integral. I was integral in his health care journey, and so I was really struggling at the end. And I knew I needed my friends around me, and I decided to host a holiday tea party with my girlfriends. And so I invited, I think it was 12 at the time, to come for my holiday tea party, and they all showed up. It's a busy time of year, and they came anyway. And I can tell you, we didn't really drink tea, but we had a really great brunch, and I just felt the love. And my friends don't all know each other, so it was an opportunity for them to meet as well, and they connected too. And now I've done it for 5 years in a row, and they look forward to it. And some of them have moved away, and they still fly back to be here. And so it's become a great ritual. So I think doing those intentional things, understanding when you need what, and hearing that about yourself, and listening to yourself is really important. I also think it's important to find time for your significant others. And I think, especially when your children are young, making sure that you hold true to a date night, finding a way to have that is important, because you are not just mom, you are a wife. You need that adult connection. You don't want to wait until they're 18 and out of the house and then say, who is this person I'm sitting across from at this table? And I think those intellectual conversations are so important, and in keeping the relationship dynamic, in keeping life interesting, and holding those relationships close. So I think it's all about intention.
And when you were, as you were overviewing kind of your career journey there, what would you say when you move from, operations, high level roles to then, running a spa to, then corporate again? What's kind of a through line for you in terms of personality traits or transferable skills? Like, what do you think from a career perspective was like, because I had these capabilities or these set of hard or soft skills, it allowed me to be so pivotal and versatile and adapt?
So there's a difference between leaders and managers, right? You could be a really good leader, but not a really good manager. And so I think one of the skills I have, and I would attribute it to my early years at Phillips Publishing, because they really invested in our education as managers. And if organizations are struggling to have and keep good managers, I suggest investing in them and doing trainings for them. But they were very focused on it. And so I took that skill set across every job I've had. And management is also life, right? So we manage relationships and situations. So having those skills from that time in my career and applying that has been a through line. And it doesn't matter at what capacity I'm in, I'm always in some type of management mode.
Mhm. And what would you say to the women in the audience that are listening who, I talk with people, or again get follow-ups after the podcast, of women who are um, highly accomplished professionals and in other areas of their lives are maybe struggling. What would you say to the so if just going back on your story, right? Going from doing all of these things professionally to then going through, significant between, the passing of people that are close to you, to a divorce, to um, the, the closing the spa business. What I'm trying to think how to ask this question. What would you, looking back, like what would you tell yourself in that moment? Or what do you say to the people out there who maybe are going through personal challenges and it's kind of at touch or at odds with like their ego or sense of self of, but I'm this, highly accomplished person, or I can excel in this area and I'm having challenges here. Was that question clear?
I think so.
Yeah.
So I think, hold on, right? So I call it my life tsunami because the waves kept coming, right? You are hit, and this isn't unusual, right? A lot of people go through this in life. It seems like it comes in waves. So you are just coming up for air and you get slammed by another wave. And you can, visually imagine it, but you can feel it as I talk about it, I think. And so you know that there's another wave coming. And in that time, it's also really hard to get excited about things because you're like, I know it's coming. I know that other wave is coming. And so I think that you have to hold on and catch air when you can catch air, and then be ready for the wave. And then eventually the sun always comes out, right? So what are you going to do when that happens? Are you going to be ready for that? Are you going to always be thinking, oh gosh, the wave is coming? That's a really hard transition. And I struggle with it myself. Like, how do I enjoy my life right now, knowing that the good isn't forever, because it never is, but always remembering the bad isn't forever either, right? So if we can hold on long enough, the good comes, and then we have to enjoy the good because we know that isn't going to last forever. So I think life is this journey. And I was asked years ago about how I felt about this kind of roller coaster of life that I've had. And what I said was, if I had to give up my high highs to never experience my low lows, I wouldn't do it. I feel like I am so fortunate to have experienced things like the top 100, being the COO of an organization, growing a business, raising this amazing daughter. I wouldn't want to give up those high highs, even though I've had to pay a price on the low lows. And so some people may say, you know what? I don't need all that. I could just enjoy a good, steady, trajectory. And I applaud them. And sometimes I wish I was them. But I think for me, I think I'm on the journey I'm supposed to be on.
On that, continuing on your journey, let's go to present day and an aspiring author, which I love it. I'm fascinated with. Talk a little bit about what inspired you to write, whatever level you're sharing, what the book's about, and just anything you want to share about what Yvette is really focused on today.
So in my free time, I'm writing a book called What You Don't Know Can Kill You. And it is a collection of stories about my journey with close friends and family in the healthcare world. And I'm hoping to inspire people to own their healthcare journey and to understand what they can do to have a better outcome than some people in my life. And so I am hopeful that it will get published in early 2026. And that would be the first book of 4 that I'm hoping to write. And they're not related at all, but things that I feel like in my life's journey are lessons I've learned and stories that I could share that I would like to, give the gift to whoever is interested in reading it.
And where would, if people are interested in just learning more about the book or the things that you're doing, I see, I know your website is in the backdrop, and we'll certainly link it up on the show notes here. But how can people get in touch with you or learn more about what you have going on?
Yeah, dyvettediamond.com is my author website, and I talk there about the 4 different books that I'm going to right over the next couple of years. So the healthcare one is my first one, and we'll go through probably 8 to 10 stories about different types of healthcare scenarios. Some are real tragic, some are inspirational, positive stories. But I will include some tips and information about kind of where to get started, what questions you could ask, what resources that I've uncovered. But just so that, there are a lot of people who still think that the doctor is always right, and they don't understand how expansive healthcare has become. It's also a business, and that's important for us to keep in mind. It's not what it used to be. And so, it's not a book that's bashing healthcare. That's not my intention, but to say it is what it is, and how can we control the outcomes and improve our lives through knowledge and awareness and learning from the stories of others.
Yeah, and that is it's interesting. I've had a lot of friends in different areas who have taken for different reasons. And I'll say to your point, just more control of their health, being more involved, getting second opinions,
Yes.
asking questions, not just, okay, the doctor said this. And so, and it's quite empowering. And it's, if you spend the time to do it, obviously you can go down a rabbit hole in a lot of ways, but it also, there's some baseline knowledge that is really just helpful, right?
Well, we don't know what we don't know. And so I had to learn a lot of things the hard way. And so I'd rather just share with other people to add value to what I've had to learn the hard way. Give it a little sense of purpose.
Right, right. There you go. That's that optimistic resiliency mindset right there. Before I get to rapid fire, I have one more question for you. But before I ask that, is there anything else that we haven't yet covered that you would like to touch on?
I'm real excited about working with my daughter. She and I try to work together wherever possible. And we are, a little teaser, we're working on an idea to have our own mother-daughter podcast. So this is something I've never done before. So I'm excited to get started. And of course, she is all-knowing about these things at her age. So we are really close, and it's enjoyable to see her evolve as her own professional. And I'm excited to come along for her ride.
I love that. And I was saying to you before we started recording, I think that it says just so much as a parent when your daughter's grown now, right? She's your
Yeah, she's
adult child.
26.
Yeah. That not only does she like her mom enough to hang out with you, but she actually enjoys working with you. I mean, I say it joking, but I just think that's it's funny. Like my kids are younger, 2 girls, 8 and 12. And I always think, as you're parenting, it's I'll find out, you can obviously have signs along the way, but it's I'll find out 10 years from now, 20 years from now, did we do a good job or not? I just think one of those just milestones is that your kid likes you and wants to be around you, So
Yes.
tip of the hat to you in terms of
Thank
your
you.
parenting.
Thank you. I used to say she was my chemistry experiment. We don't know, right? You add a little of this, you add a little of that, you take a little of this out, and you hope that you're doing it right. I think the only thing we can do again is to be intentional, right? I was never trying to raise the best 5-year-old or the best 12-year-old. I was trying to raise up an adult. And somehow we manage them and their personalities over those, hard years, and we get to the adult. And I'm really proud of her and who she is and where she's headed. And she's a very dynamic adult. She's fun to watch.
That's amazing. That's awesome. All right, my last question before I get to rapid fire is, how do you define success?
Mhm. Feeling purpose. I think it's, it's never about money, and it's not about the material things. Those things can kind of be fleeting, as I've learned myself. But if you are always doing things that fill your cup, that give you purpose, that make you feel whole, that you are proud of, that you can say that you left the world in a slightly better place than where you found it, then that feels like success.
I love that. And I think that I probably am pretty close to sharing your definition. So I love that you shared that. It reminded me there's this poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson called Success. And one of the lines, I'm going to misquote it a little bit, but one of the lines is to leave the world a better place, like whether by a healthy child or a garden, like a healthy garden patch.
Yes.
And it just how you articulated it just reminded me of that. So thank you for sharing.
And that's a really good reminder too. It doesn't have to be a big change. It doesn't have to have a big impact, right? Not everybody has to change the world. But to your point, it could be a beautiful garden patch, right?
Mhm.
It could be raising a child. And I think all of those things are part of my legacy.
Mhm. All right, I'm going to go to rapid fire, unrelated to anything that we talked about. Just first answer that comes to mind of what your preference is. Okay, brick or stone,
Stone,
delivery or carry out,
carry out,
East Coast or West Coast,
West Coast,
grass or sky,
sky.
astronaut or deep sea diver.
Ooh, astronaut.
All right, and last one, beach or mountains.
Oof. Beach.
All right. That will wrap us up for this episode. Yvette, I so enjoyed talking to you. I feel like honestly I could sit here and talk to you for like another 2 hours, but we have things to do, so we can't do that.
Thank you so much. This was very enjoyable.
I loved it. To the audience out there, we'll link it up in the show notes. But again, check out Yvette on dyvetteDiamond.com and reach out to her, hear all the fascinating and amazing things she's doing with her book. When it comes out, go buy a copy. And thank you, Yvette, again for joining.
Thank you so much.
All right. Until next time, this is the Lauren Asghari podcast, How Her Career Get There. And we will see you on the next episode.
Let's talk a bunch of different topics.
How her career get there.
This is a podcast with Lauren Asghari.